Hi, everyone. I just want to start by saying thank you again for attending our PolyWorks training event 2024, and also thank you for sticking around. I've seen quite a few people have left. I won't take it personally. But yeah, so if any of you who don't already know, my name's Keith Tsang. I'm going to show you a couple of new things to do with the PolyWorks DataLoop and PolyWorks PMI Loop part of PolyWorks. I am going to cover some of this a bit quickly, so please excuse me. There's a fair bit to go through. But if you do have any questions and there's anything I've kind of covered a bit too quickly or not enough detail with, by all means come and grab any of us to discuss them in more detail. So starting off, I'd like to show you how Intermetric have actually improved the security policies when dealing with PolyWorks DataLoop, specifically around when dealing with multiple business areas and even suppliers. So if you weren't already aware, when we talk about multiple business areas or suppliers when dealing with DataLoop, if you weren't familiar, you can actually have just a single database that everyone uploads onto. But rather than, say, for example, if your company has like a woodshop department, they're only going to upload their results to DataLoop, and they only want to see their results of their wooden parts inspections. But then you may have another department which is specifically for kind of composites. Again, they're going to upload their results and they want to review their results and not have to trawl through kind of the other department's results. At the same time, you may have multiple suppliers supplying you with inspection results for the parts that they supply, but you may not want them to see the other suppliers and what they're supplying. So we can achieve that by creating what we call security policies, which will then give users or groups specific certain privileges, what they can and can't do and what they can and can't see. So yeah, suppliers. So there are two main pain points from previous implementation of the security policies. First of all, when you upload a brand new workspace, when you came to the point of selecting which policy to apply this to, one of the issues was you can actually see the full list of policies that the company has created, even though you weren't part of any of those other policies. The second pain point was, despite which policy you chose to upload to, DataLoop would actually upload to the default security policy, which was specified within the DataLoop core administrator, often resulting in errors telling that the user doesn't have access or privileges to upload to, which can confuse them, even though they think they do. But because of this default policy, it's confusing there. So what we have is two business areas. We have a business area A, business area B, and pay attention to specifically this Mr. Douglas, who is part of business area B. So when this guy starts to upload a brand new workspace, you can see Mr. Douglas is logged in at the moment. He's going to just fill in some details. And you can see that when it comes to choosing which policy that he wants to upload to, he can actually see the full list of policies that the company has created. Even though he's not part of business area A, he can still see it, which some people might not be an issue, but like I said, if you're different suppliers, you may not want the other suppliers to see other suppliers in that list. The other issue is when it comes to uploading, actually performing the upload. If you choose business area B, you can see that eventually when it comes to upload, the notification window pops up telling him that there's an issue. And if he expands on that issue, it tells him that he doesn't have permission to upload, even though he does. But the problem is it was defaulting to the default business area, which was business area A. So an improvement that Intermetric has made is they've added a new visible to option when creating or editing these security policies. And the way that Intermetric have improved pain point 2 is by simply removing that global default security policy. And instead what they've done is they've introduced a new workspace management permissions tab where you can then pick per user or per group what their default security is. So now when you upload new workspaces to DataLoop, you will only now see the security policies that are applicable to you, and it will upload to the security policy that you pick rather than just the default global security one. A new tool that they've introduced for 2024 is a tool called the Automated File Processor for DataLoop, or they abbreviated to AFP. As DataLoop offers a centralized database for inspection results, more and more automated cells are being used to measure parts, which is a great solution for analysis engineers, managers, and so forth to be able to quickly and easily view the results while they're being continuously scanned and inspected. However, one of the issues is some of that data isn't scanned directly into PolyWorks. And instead, some of these cells are simply scanning and exporting them into a folder where then an operator or an engineer has to then load in that data into PolyWorks, inspect it, and then manually upload to DataLoop every time. So to help leverage the system, there needs to be a simple access point for non-native data. So what Inametric have introduced is a new AFP toolbar, which allows us to monitor a folder. So we've got our first button here, will actually start the monitoring process. The second button will actually stop the monitoring process. The third button, the first tool within there, allows you to actually customize or configure the current workstation, i.e. where it's looking and what it's looking for. The button below that allows you to set the default workflow, i.e. which template within that project to be using, and what happens if it detects a duplicate data set. And the last option, same as before, but now you can actually apply it specifically to specific projects if you wanted to, rather than just a general setting. So to give you a quick overview or workflow of that process, you'll need to set up a few directories up front, and obviously you'll need your inspection projects to be uploaded onto the DataLoop server. So you start by monitoring the folder, and then once the scan data is scanned and dropped into that, what they call the root data folder, you then, the AFP will grab that, move it into a processing folder. Based on the name of that scan, it will then use the macro to find the name of the project, create a brand new piece, import the data into that piece, start the inspection sequence. And once it's finished the results, upload the results into DataLoop, and then it shifts the data into either the success folder or a issue folder, if depending on the results. Closes the inspection project down, updates a log file within the administrative folder, and then starts to monitor again that same folder again, ready for the next bit of scan to be dropped in. So obviously, as I mentioned partway through there, it looks at the scan file. Based upon the name of that scan file, it opens up the relevant project. So obviously what that does mean is that you're required to name the scan by the project name, followed by the date and time. If you wanted to, you could take it a step further and include additional properties. So you can see here, we can also include the serial number, order number, operator name, and so forth. And that will then automatically read that in and populate your piece properties or project properties with those extra strings. At any point, if you want to ignore any of those, you can just put a hyphen in there just to kind of ignore that one property if you wanted to. And just a note, this will be available in 2024, but in IR1. So currently not available, but within the next month, I'd imagine, when IR1 comes out. Moving on to you Android users, and if you're using DataLoop, there's been a PolyWorks DataLoop mobile interface app available for iOS devices, so Apple iPhones, iPads for a number of years now, and they finally now released one for Android. Sadly, it doesn't quite have the same functionalities as the iOS version, so there are little things like being able to share links, get notifications, and even panning the 3D model restrictions at the moment, but obviously they will continue to develop that. Obviously, all in all, it's still less functionality than just looking at a web interface on a laptop and so forth, but the whole idea of that is it's optimized and easy to use for small screens and phones and tablets. So if you want to see this in action, let us know. I was going to do a demonstration actually live on the phone, but if you want to come and find me afterwards, I can actually show you running on my phone if you like. But the idea is you kind of direct PolyWorks app to where your server is. You then log in with your credentials. It will then take you to a recently accessed screen where you can then search for your workspaces. Once you're looked into a particular project, you can then swipe through your different control views or look at a control view list. You can even view the list of pieces and obviously interrogate each of those pieces as well. Look at your full formatted report. And then you can even just view the whole project as a 3D model where you can pinch and rotate, pinch and zoom, tap and rotate. And there's even access to the chat thread, like you'd normally find within the web interface, as well as just an overview of your project properties, piece properties, and so forth. So yeah, if you want to see that in action, come and find me. Next topic, I want to show you, there's a slight change to the report loop plugins. So report loop for Excel, and I'm going to show you a new analysis tool that they've introduced. So before I go into the main topic, they've actually changed the name of PolyWorks Report Loop from what used to be called PolyWorks Report Loop for Inspector and PolyWorks Report Loop for DataLoop. They've now renamed it to PolyWorks for Excel, in brackets Inspector, and Report Loop for Excel, in brackets DataLoop. You should be see a little bit later on why that might be the case. But that's just a minor change there. So what they've now introduced is what they call the normal capability six-pack. They could some people call it other things, process capability six-pack, capability analysis six-pack, capability analysis report, or a combination of those words. Typically found in the likes of Minitab, and it's a statistical analysis tool that helps visualize the capability of your manufacturing process using charts and plots. By determining the process is stable and in control, to determine if the data flows in a normal distribution, and to estimate the overall capability and potential capability. Here we have a typical layout of a normal capability six-pack, and hopefully you can see why it's called a six-pack. We've got 6 charts there. The first 2 on the left is our I and MR charts to help visualize if the process is stable. On the right, top right-hand corner, we have the capability histogram to check for performance of the process. Below that, we have the normal probability plot to see if the data is normally distributed. Bottom right-hand corner, we have the capability plot, which is to evaluate the capability of the process. On the bottom left, we have our last 25 pieces to evaluate the distribution of the observation of, within our subgroups. Now, there's actually 2 ways PolyWorks can report this information. One way is through the web interface. So you can see here we've got widgets. Now, you can see there's a blank spot on the bottom-hand corner where you'd normally have the capability plot. The reason why that doesn't exist at the moment is because it's already built into the capability histogram at the top. So they're still giving you the six-pack information, just with 5 widgets instead. However, I'm led to believe there is a way of generating or configuring that to show a full 6-pack if you wanted to. This method is used more for kind of continuous improvement, where the typical workflow would include inline measurements done within the inspector and then uploaded to DataLoop. And then this dashboard will be created to monitor the capability of the key characteristics, say of the last 100 pieces, for example. Disadvantages and advantages. The advantage of it is to create, is that once created, the analysis will remain up to date as new measurement pieces are added to the list. DataLoop will simply update the widgets and keep everything up to date. It's quick to access, so obviously you can share this information by just sharing the link to your web interface and your dashboard. However, the downside or the disadvantage is the time-consuming process of having to create each of these widgets, especially if you want to change characteristics or controls for that. And a limitation to this as well, it only supports subgroups of 1, so you can only view the I and MR charts rather than your X bar and R charts. The alternative is a new template that Anymetric have created in Excel. So the idea of that is with DataLoop, you can then populate these charts with pre-existing with information from DataLoop with these pre-existing plots and charts. And the idea of this is it's more used as a validation tool. So the idea is with the workflow is you measure, I don't know, say 300 pieces. You then upload all the information to DataLoop, and then you'll open up this Excel spreadsheet and you'll populate all that information. And then obviously you can share that information and even then quickly change controls. So you can actually quickly switch what information you're reporting based on what measurement in there. So it's because you're already linking to DataLoop, you're just pulling that information and just refreshing those quite easily. So advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages is this method supports subgroups greater than 1. So there is a field in there which you can just choose how many what the subgroup value is. And it's easy to review multiple controls, as I mentioned. You can quickly switch the cells to say, look at circle 1 versus circle 2, and so forth. Downside of this, though, is it's not automatically updatable, i.e. in order for you to update this, you'd have to manually open up the spreadsheet, reconnect to data loop, and let it refresh that way, rather than it just being always up to date. And obviously, because it's an Excel spreadsheet, it's prone to someone interfering or messing up the formulas and then messing up the charts and plots because of it. Limitations, does not support X-bar and S-charts, these standard deviation charts, and it's not available until IR1 again of PolyWorks 2024. Now, one of the main reasons why they've decided to rename the Report Loop plugin is because they're now introducing other plugins. So Report Loop for Power BI is a new functionality that they're introducing. What is Power BI? Taken straight from Microsoft's web and website, Power BI is a collection of software services, apps, and connectors that work together to turn your unrelated sources of data into coherent, visually immersive, and interactive insights. Your data might be an Excel spreadsheet, a collection of cloud-based or on-premises hybrid data warehouses. Power BI lets you easily connect your data sources, visualize and discover what's important, share it with anyone and everyone you want. What does that even mean? Why use Power BI? So if you weren't familiar, there are actually limitations to the number of values and cells that you can use in Excel. So if you've got a really, really big data set, there's a good chance you may max out and not have all the information available. Power BI offers better tools to analyze larger data sets than you normally find in Excel. You can get more control on visualizing and analyzing your own styles of dashboards and tools. It's easy to share the information as well. And one of the good things is you can even schedule it and tell it how often to refresh that information. So it'll automatically just connect, update, and close itself down again. So to give you kind of breakdown on how all that works, PolyWorks is essentially just offering you a connector. So the idea is Power BI, you have a Power BI analyst who will open up what they call Power BI desktop. That he then searches for the data loop connector, connects to the data loop, downloads the information that he needs, and then he can then start to create whatever kind of dashboards, analysis charts, plots, and whatever he needs from that. And then he publishes that information to what they call Power BI services. That can then be distributed to whoever needs to view the information. So as a quick, rough walkthrough, this is the interface here. The Power BI analysis will use the Get Data tool, search for the PolyWorks DataLoop connector, and then it'll ask them to sign in, direct himself to where the DataLoop server is located. It will then give him a list of potential tables to bring in, so a table to show all controls, all pieces, all workspaces, and is that all four? Yeah, controls, pieces, projects, and template, and workspaces. And you can even take it a step further and actually then customize or modify what information is being retrieved, i.e. there may be a column of information that he's not interested in, just remove that column so it doesn't bring that extra bits of information if he wants. Once that's downloaded, he can then start to create the relevant kind of dashboard, charts, analysis tools, and so forth that they need. So hopefully you can see there the benefits of leveraging tools like Power BI alongside the available data that you may have accumulated within PolyWorks DataLoop, allowing easy access to inspection results stored within DataLoop database, creating powerful analysis reports, and not being limited by the likes of Excel in terms of speed, size of the data sets, and the available reporting tools. Something worth noting, though, is unlike PolyWorks Report Loop for Excel, PolyWorks Report Loop for Power BI will not be free. So just be mindful of that. On our last topic, we're going to look at PolyWorks PMI Plus Loop, specifically to do with characteristic augmentations. If you're not familiar with the term characteristics, these are any 3D annotations that you typically find attached to your CAD models. Often called PMI, and it's the equivalent in PolyWorks as a control. Characteristic augmentations, though, are the extra specialized supplemental information or instructions that are attached to these characteristics. And these are typically annotated by predefined textual or even symbolic representations, and these representations are what we call augmenters. Now, currently in PolyWorks, we already support one type of augmenter, and that is the characteristic numbers, or some people call it balloons. And when we import them into PolyWorks, as you can see here within our geometry control window, we can populate our designated characteristic number column with that information. Now, there are many augmentators that certain companies can use. For example, again, we have the product characteristic tag or characteristic number. We have the production requirement association, like what document you would need to read to interpret this control. Criticality classification, so a rating system on how important that particular control might be. Or even something like the verification plan requirements, which in this example shows you that this particular control needs to be measured with a CMM. Now, there are many, many more augmentators that companies can use, but all that kind of creates what we call a characteristic definition of that particular control. Now, one of the main problems that users, a couple of main problems that companies face at the moment with augmentators is characteristic augmentations are not interoperable with native CAD translators or even downstream applications, regardless of whether it's PolyWorks. So any other CAD package, any other inspection softwares will have the same issues. They can't necessarily bring in natively these characteristic augmentations. Adding these augmentators can be very time-consuming for the CAD operator as well, having to manually create them one by one. And because of this, it's also prone for errors, whether you're typing in the information or even just interpreting the information incorrectly from the company documentation. So the objective of this new functionality that Inimetric are introducing in 2024 is a tool that is flexible, a flexible solution that allows the CAD or the process administrator to digitize their characteristic augmentation rules to ensure the augmenters are defined in the same way by all CAD users. The solution needs to be fast and easy to use by the CAD users so they can bulk edit without having to type in everything manually. And finally, the solution needs to be interoperable with downstream applications such as PolyWorks Inspector, DataLoop, Report Loop, and so forth, and potentially even other softwares. The solution to this is to create a flexible tool that offers the CAD or process administrator to digitize their company's characteristic augmentation rules into a customizable XML file. This XML file is referred to as an administrator settings file, and this will provide parameters to encode the augmenters with flexibility to the point where here you can specify whether you're displaying textual or symbolic information, or in this example, listing the the criticality classification values that the company may use. The administrator settings file plus environment variables set on each of the CAD users' computers makes this characteristic augmentation rules shareable. And not only that, this ensures that the augmenters are consistently defined for a large group of CAD users. And when the administrator updates this setting file, every CAD user automatically gets that updated for them as well, so that everything's up to date in the same way. So let's see how that actually works with the CAD operator, so the CAD users. So in this application, this is NX. They jump into the list of characteristic tools. They now can select a group of controls or characteristics. They can then apply things like the production requirement association, a criticality classification, and even specify a verification plan requirement, i.e., again, measure with the CMM. And then in terms of PolyWorks, once they've saved this information with the measurement plan, they'll then import the CAD model into PolyWorks. It will load in that measurement plan along with it, and it will then create all these extra augmentations in here as custom properties. So you can see as it loads in, within the geometry control, for example, and in other areas of PolyWorks, you can see that they can enable the characteristic augmentations. And you can see they can even then start to filter out this information if they wanted to. So because some of them have a requirement to be measured with the CMM, they can quickly apply a filter to say, show me everything that needs to be measured with the CMM only. And those are just some of the new things that they're going to introduce in PolyWorks DataLoop and PMI Plus Loop. I'd like to again thank you all for listening. And again, if you have any questions, please get in touch with us. Again, apologies for rushing through that. But yeah, there's obviously, if you know how PolyWorks or Intermetric work, there will be more added throughout the year. So keep an eye on the releases and so forth. Before I leave you, before I pass you on to the next operator, just be mindful that these passes here, there is a QR code on there. For you to scan that, it will give you links to be able to obviously get quotes and information from us. There's even a £5 voucher for Costas, I think, if you fill in a feedback form and stuff. So yeah, just a little shout out there. But yeah, thank you. And I'd like to pass you now on to our next guest speaker, Paul.